working group. Thank y'all all for being here. We have a sign-up sheet going around. April is setting up the template so you'll know what information we would love to get from y'all. We are glad all our visitors are here. Yeah.
I don't think I have a nonprofit.
Hope not.
Let's hope not.
So I'm just going to note real quick which council members are here. And then I'll work on the sign-up sheet for the rest. All our J guys and J ladies. Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay, great. All right. So again, just to recap, the goal of this group is to ensure that we have an open and transparent process for any nonprofits that may be receiving money from Metro government. We want to provide a clear path so that they know what the process is. We always want to reiterate that we never have as much resources as we would like to do all the things we would like to do. So we will have to make hard choices. This is not a guarantee that everyone will be able to get funding, but we want to ensure that for those who are seeking funding, they understand what the process is early enough on in the process that when you're ready to get going, all the preamble things have happened. And so with that, we're glad that y'all are here in February, so that hopefully this will feed into the FY26 budget. If you're interested in providing a service that Metro should be providing, that your group can do better than Metro can. And I'll just say, Margaret, pull up a chair. Yeah. April Calvin is here from the Office of Homeless Services, and that's a great example of y'all have Room in the Inn who does provide some important services for y'all that it functions better because they are doing it for you.
Yes.
So
we have a couple of agencies like that, so that's why I'm here, just to kind of learn more.
Great. Okay, because y'all, we're also probably going to draw on you. What I want to spend a fair amount of time on is kind of a one-page document. I apologize, I don't have a legal pad to write on after that. Okay, so that being said, what I would love for this meeting to focus on is sort of what our communication plan looks like at this point. And there are kind of two main things that I want to focus on right now. One is this one pager that's being passed around, hopefully in both directions, and there should be enough copies that some of our visitors. Here's a chair.
I don't belong there.
I know.
Well, you gotta take it. Top left.
I
Just came here to be nosy.
So with your left. So I have asked one of the committee members, Councilmember Spain, if he would sort of compile some of what this group has learned over the course of our meeting time into a one-pager that we can provide to nonprofit organizations that indicate that they are interested in trying to do work for Metro. And so that is, I have finally learned the system and notified MNN that we would like to be able to share what's on our computer.
Yes.
So there it is. And so hopefully some of you have hard copies of this, and if not, you can squirm in your chair and see what's up there. Or if y'all will share the hard copies with the people who are sitting underneath it so they won't have to break their necks trying to find it. We're hoping to have this ready to hand out at the meeting last night when we had the public comment period on the budget. There were a lot of great organizations represented, but we want this group to bless it so that we can then say it's from this group. And so that's one of our goals today, is to look this over and make whatever edits we think would be helpful. So we would welcome input both from the council perspective, from the Metro perspective, and from the nonprofit perspective. Is this the information that would be helpful to see that ahead of time? So I'm just going to real quickly run through sort of the categories of it. So again, just to reiterate, this is for someone who is interested in providing services to Metro or enhanced services to help achieve Metro's mission. And this is not the application process or a guarantee that you will get funding, so that's consistent with what we've said. So any comments on that initial statement? I think you summed it up very well, Mr. Spain. Anybody got any Comments or questions on that first section? Okay, so one thing that we have learned is many good-hearted council members at the end of the budget public hearing, which will happen in June after the mayor's budget comes out, have with great, good intent said, oh, that organization made a good case, we think they should have money, let's put them in the budget. And then it takes them 9 months to actually figure out how to get that money. And so what we want to start with is saying anybody who thinks they can provide a service for Metro better than we can, you need to identify what department you think you would fit under. And again, I will go to the example of the Office of Homeless Services. Room in the Inn knows that what they do fits under there, and they work very closely with them. And I think they probably have come through maybe initially an RFP process.
Yeah, early on.
And so, just for context here, often a very orderly process is that a department will say, we need something done, we can't do it, we are going to issue an RFP and send it out to the world, and then a number of organizations will come to us, and we will have a specific rubric that says, here's what we need, and here's how these people fit in with that, and we will be able to show why we chose that organization, and then we will go through a contract process. That is an orderly way to do it. Sometimes the budget process creates an unorderly way to do it that we are trying to sort of figure out how to dovetail back into that orderly process. And so part of what we've learned is if the mayor or Metro Council specifically says, this organization needs to get this money, and we spell it out in the budget, then we've jump-started that process, and they get to go straight to, now we have to communicate with that department, and there is information they need to be able to give them on day one, and that needs to be ready on day one. So that's part of what we're doing. If all the council does is says, we think there should be money in the budget for violence interruption, then there will have to be an RFP process, and that will create a lag time. So again, we just want to make sure that that's clear to any nonprofits who want to do this. So if you identify a Metro department, and that department through communications puts you in their budget, when they go to the mayor, they will still probably have to have an RFP process to ensure that you're the one that does it, but there will be money in the budget for you. That's one way this process can start. If you haven't done that by now, it's probably too late for the FY26 budget, because all those departments are already talking to the mayor. So but you can still be on the lookout for the department that you care about issuing an RFP. So, item number 1, work through the appropriate Metro department. Have we said everything that needs to be said with regard to that? And I will, just for the fun of it, hit Control click and see if that actually gets us to. So that link will just get you to Nashville departments. In a minute, we're going to go to the website and look at some other places on the application process that will actually give you a drop down of departments if you're going through that process. Okay. Okay, let's just keep following down this. So in terms of working with an appropriate Metro department, we provide a link to at least see what all departments are. There are other ways to get there that you can get through if you're going through the actual application process. Any comments on item number 1? We think it's good. All right.
The only part of this record that I didn't reference at all is the mayor's role in all this, because I kind of assume at this point they are coming to us, and also we're not really in a position to speak for the mayor's office on this, but so it focuses on our role and the department's role without really going into the mayor's part of all this.
Right. And I will say the website, which we'll get to in a minute, does a good job of talking about sort of other processes like the Community Partner Fund, the Community Safety Partner Fund, that the mayor drives. So I think that information is somewhere. So I'm okay not having that on there. Again, everyone here is empowered to speak. We do need to identify ourselves before we speak. But if y'all are discovering we're headed down a wrong path, let me know.
Yeah, Chair Allen, just quick point to Councilmember Spain's item here. So would it make sense on top of this one pager to have even just a quick chart? Like, here's the timeline, here are the players involved. It is, to your point, extremely important for nonprofits to understand that the mayor sets the budget, and we can offer substitute budgets for sure, but his budget is oftentimes a guiding star for us on council.
Hold that thought.
And I'm happy to own that too, since I brought it up.
Okay.
And that, I mean, that exists. We've seen that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
in
hope-
our orientation kind of stuff that's out there somewhere.
It exists
Yeah.
to a certain extent, but I'm talking about making it digestible for people that don't live in Metro.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you owned it, and that's been noted.
Yep.
Hold that thought for when we look at what's on the website, and let's
Yep.
see either if it's actually there,
Sounds
and
good.
we just hadn't poked around and found it, because sometimes that happens, or it's sort of there, and we can
Yep, that sounds good.
talk about how further to do
Chair.
that. Yes, and then Ms.
Hi,
Garvey.
Heather Michelle with the Reply Institute. A question I have is, do we anticipate that all the departments will have the same timeline as far as proposals that they're soliciting from the nonprofit groups? Are they gonna have different deadlines that we just need to work directly with them, or can we also put that in the chart, or do we expect them to all have the same deadlines?
That's a good question.
I'm gonna recognize Mary Jo Wiggins in the Finance Department.
I'm gonna let April talk. I should actually let you go first.
All right.
Well, I was just gonna say, most departments would have different timelines depending on the needs. So for example, we would probably put out an RFP for cold weather shelter, that's at the end of the year, but we would put out the RFP at the beginning of the year to go through the process. So it just depends on the service and the department and the need.
In the need.
Such a good example. And I was gonna, you'll see when we get to the finance page that we talk about some of the primary buckets of funding, but I'll never come to this meeting and not say this, we are not funders. There is not an actual grant application cycle. So every department, if they have budgeted funds that they use to outsource with the nonprofit, they're gonna have an independent cycle, and it might fall under one of the existing funds that we talk about. It might fall under community safety partnership, it might fall under community partnership funds, it might be a direct appropriation, but it could be something completely different, like what April just said they have with cold weather shelters. You might have Office of Family Safety that has had funds in their budget for years and years, and they have their own, cycle that's completely separate. So there just is not a way to say this is Metro's grant cycle, because we are not a foundation with, traditional grant applications.
And I think the ultimate moral of the story is develop relationships with the departments that you can work with, and learn what their cycles are. And if you can work within that, your life will probably be better. But we witnessed it again last night. There are people who will come and say, we need this money. And we've learned that as a council, it does not help if we just splat it into the budget without being thoughtful. So we're trying to let everybody know. And we are gonna have a separate meeting with the council members with the Budget and Finance Committee to educate them on this as well. And that's another place where this one pager will go. So, Ms. Darby did.
I just wanted to real quickly say that I've got some suggestions, but they're primarily stylistic, housekeeping,
Okay.
style, formatting suggestions, but just to let you know that I'll want to do kind of like a once-over before everything is submitted formally.
Duly noted. Thank you for raising that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the appropriate department, and I think everybody feels like that statement for what this is good. We will talk again when we come to the website, which we'll try to leave plenty of time for. So what we are saying to nonprofits is, what information are you going to need to include and have ready when you actually start trying to have the process of having funds. And this is again, there were some great speeches made last night, but there was not a lot of specifics. And so we just want those groups to know that when it's time to start saying, okay, give us our $10 million, that they're gonna need to identify their purpose and need, they're gonna need a detailed budget, they're gonna need to talk about project outcomes and measurable measures of success and impact. And so those three buckets there, identify the purpose and need, what are you requesting funding for, why is it needed, what criteria must be met. And that, again, that should ensure that the project aligns with the city's goals, priorities, and funding objectives. And one thing we want to make sure is that it is possible to find out what the city's goals, priorities, and funding objectives are. So that's another thought to hold when we go to the Metro page. There are some cities that have a very deliberate process for coming up with the strategic plan for the city. Nashville has not done that per se through that process, but there are places on the grants website that do talk about identified goals and priorities. So identify the purpose and need. Any comments on that section?
I would be curious, especially from a funding side, as well as knowing what the project's aiming towards and the outcome, what are some of that organization's past success stories?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's a good one, history.
Director.
Okay, this is brand
Thank
new.
you so much, Director. This is Director Diane Alacon from
Yes,
NDOT.
thank you.
National
And I apologize, I just learned about this process 2 weeks ago. And it is fitting, this is gonna fit into where we wanna partner with the universities and do real time with the students on like signal timing
Oh,
and
fun.
speed evaluations and that stuff. So using the students with the professor's guidance over. So this is gonna be new for us and what we're and how we're approaching it. So I just, with that request of what that experience is, some of this is brand new, it hasn't been done here
Good point.
in Nashville. I think if there has been some experience, we should definitely include it, but I wanna make sure that something brand new that's being tried is given that opportunity.
I'm all about experimentation.
Innovation, we call it.
Can be taken a lot of ways.
Yeah. So
No, I agree with the experience and how it'll demonstrate, what the department need is, but like, this is our first approach in using all the universities to help us with some of these practices in real time.
And you'll be paying them.
Yes,
Okay.
we are paying for the studio semester session, and it's usually done with masters and some bachelors, but masters and PhDs. So it gives you a really good quality information, but it also gives them real-time experience.
Yeah, that's a great partnership. Again, is there a place on this sheet to put that? I know that I believe it shows up on the website when we look at
Okay.
information that's needed. Just,
Past
what is your
success.
past experience?
We wouldn't have anything about past success. You mean like metrics? That is so
Yeah, pretty sure that,
broad.
yeah.
I don't even know how we would
Could you base
start
it on qualification?
So again, often, in the orderly process, the departments will have said, here's what we need, here's the experience we need you to have. We want you to list 3 prior projects. So if it goes through a department RFP process, that is already built in.
Okay.
And I think most departments who do a lot of this know how to do that. There are a few departments who are new to it and who are learning that there is a great resource already available that Ms. Dozier sort of oversees for our grants process. And again, the other group that we want to educate is just sort of those out there departments that, if we throw something at them, don't know how this process should work because they don't usually do it. And we may learn we should stop doing that, but I can't guarantee that, so our hope is that we will.
Can I just say for clarification,
Absolutely.
there's not a grant process. What finance does is we have a department that reviews grant contracts that were in place for,
After they're selected.
yes, after they've been completed.
Gotcha.
After the grant
grant's
contract
complete.
period is complete, we go in and say, did this nonprofit do what they were supposed to do? It's a monitoring and a compliance.
Right.
That's what finance
Good clarification. Right. So we need to ensure on the front end that those items that you're checking for were identified on the front end because we have.
That's in their grant contract from a scope of work.
From a
So
scope
if a
of work.
nonprofit says, we're gonna serve this many people, we're gonna have this many classes, we're gonna have, make this many widgets. And at the end of the contract, when they do a final report, that's when the grants and accountability team comes in and does monitoring.
And on the front end, welcome, save just seat right here. Who is overseeing the contract document part of that?
Do you mean
With-
like getting it, the departments?
The department, okay. So again, it's on the department to know what they're doing.
And we work closely with legal, Metro Legal, so we would be the ones to release the RFP, have a very prescriptive scope of work we're looking for. Then there's a list of demands like, showing proof that they're 501c3, certificate of insurance. There's a list of things that they can do business here in Tennessee. There's a list of like threshold requirements. And then on the scoring matrix, you would have like how many points you would give them for whatever it is that you're trying to score or what your needs are.
Gotcha.
After you give the prescriptive RFP.
Okay, that is excellent. Can you tell me what part of Metro helped you develop all that so that you've got a good system? Or did you just...
From many years at a nonprofit,
Okay.
right? Many years at a nonprofit, and
So,
I knew what to,
Yeah.
what was needed, and so we worked closely with a consultant back then for probably the very first one that we deployed, and then we've just fine-tuned it since then.
Gotcha.
And so once the score, we'll have a review team that will help with scoring, not just within our department, that would help with scoring the applications. And then after that, we work closely with Metro Legal on, once we've narrowed it down to who we're gonna fund, on making sure that it meets the requirements of the nonprofit agreement.
Gotcha. And so if we have a new department, for example, we threw something in the lap of health at one point, and it seemed like they, the people that it landed on struggled with creating that framework. And so is there any kind of, I guess this is a question for y'all as well, is there any kind of setup in legal or in finance to say, here's the book of how to do it right, follow this template, and come back to us when you get to
Finance
the...
can only tell them what they need from an eligibility standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It's your subject matter experts that are developing rubrics.
Right,
It's
and-
your subject matter experts that have to be the ones to say, this is what we need. So like as Diana's developing a new, program, they're the subject matter experts. The departments are the ones that have to say what they need these nonprofits to do.
Right.
And how they will measure if they did it well.
Gotcha. We would just say to you, talk to April.
Yeah,
I can give you copies
it's
of
already
what we
on my
use.
list.
Yeah, and NASA, that's
Yeah.
another organization, and I mean, there are a couple of departments that have done this a lot, and we want to ensure that whenever there's a new department starting to do it, that y'all
Yeah.
build up as robust a system as they have, so that when it gets to the back end and they come to you, you've got something to work with, instead of, you said you were gonna solve world peace, what are the metrics here?
That would be awesome.
Wouldn't it be great? So, okay, so that's good. So in terms of what we're telling people, we are not, again, they're gonna have to find a department. We are gonna do our work to at least let departments know that there are good frameworks out there that they should learn from, so that hopefully they'll have the stuff like, we need to know what projects you've done. Do we wanna add something here under identify purpose and need? Prepare a detailed budget, maybe that's where, I'm trying to tie back into that one question about experience. Does that belong here, or will that be taken up by the department once they get directed to that? In terms of telling them what they need to be thinking about before they even think about asking for money. Have we identified the purpose and need? What are you requesting funding for? Why is it needed? What criteria must be met? Is that?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So is the intent of this document for nonprofits to be able to solicit for funding even when there's not an RFP? Because typically we've done it the opposite way, where we knew the funding, we knew the need, and we released an RFP.
Right.
I need it the other way.
We need it for them to write in, say,
Right.
this is what I want to help you with.
So for example, we'll go to the universities and say, this is what we need, this is the study we want. So, and we'll have some ideas about what the deliveries need to be, but we'll work with them on establishing like task orders and what the cost of that task order is, or up there it says project or program, but we would also include like task order stuff. So how many people are gonna be involved? What all is that gonna entail? What equipments are needed? And then it'll be broken out, and then we would be measuring that by task order, making sure they hit their milestones. Those are key words in a university setting, that's why I'm using them. But, and then the deliverable at the end, which would be all of the data we need to actually make the improvement.
That's it. And then, is that money already in your budget this year?
Yes.
Okay, so you know that amount, and that's the ideal thing. I mean,
Right.
hopefully somebody came to you and said, we think y'all could do this if you use university or whatever, and you've thought it through and you've got it in your budget.
Correct.
That's the perfect way. We're just trying to intercept the ones that have come to us in a not orderly fashion. Chair, and so this is our budget chair, so Councilmember Porterfield. You're
Hello,
recognized.
everyone. Thank you. So it kind of goes back to like the purpose of why I wanted to create. We have a few subcommittees that we created this year through budget, and the reason for creating this particular subcommittee. So in the past, you had nonprofits that were kind of baked in the budget, and for years they had access to funding. And then when it was time for the council to look at their substitute budget, you would have nonprofits that would come down and ask for money, and it really depended on, like, did you know a council member? Did you have a good relationship? Like, did you know how to kind of like intercept the process? So some people were on the front end asking for money. Some people came in at the very back end and just kind of, and just had maybe it was a great proposal, but they didn't know how to get in the budget. But if you don't know a council member, or if you don't have access to a council member, that doesn't mean that you're not doing worthy work in the city. So my vision for this was like, how do we create a process that's more equitable and transparent so that anyone in the city has access and has the same ability to know how to get funding, and it's not based upon like who you know or who you have a relationship with. So we know that we don't have like unlimited resources. Like ideally, nonprofits have funders and donors, and the government should not be their funder. So we're not trying to operate in the space of being a funder, but if a nonprofit is able to provide a resource at a lower cost, like if a nonprofit does workforce development and it may cost the city $3 million to do a workforce development program, but we can invest $50,000 in another nonprofit that's already doing it, it benefits the residents of our city. So how do we make sure that they get that information and that they have equitable and transparent access?
Right. And then hopefully from here, we can drive them to the things that are on the website, which we're going to talk to in -2 minutes, because I want to allow time for that as well.
Yeah, I just, to that point, sort of the intent of this was to be a very, 10,000 foot kind of, because anything we're going to put in one page on this process is obviously going to have to be a very high level. By the time we get into rubrics and fiscal agents and all that sort of stuff, you're going to have to be well into the process. So the idea was just some general guideposts to head them down that path.
Yeah, and so, in terms of, we told them identify purpose and need, they will need to prepare a detailed budget and proposed outcomes and impact. Any comments on those three pieces of what we're saying?
Yeah, just really quick, I'm not sure really where it belongs, but Councilmember Porterfield brought up a really good point regarding people that were baked into the budget, right? I think it's really important for a department to understand what someone has been doing if they've received funds before, and especially to your point, if they're providing a service that is that they can do at a fifth of the cost that we do it, I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? And that can help the departments kind of weigh those selections. Not sure where it belongs, though. I'd be very curious for that discussion.
Can you capsulize that in one?
Yes, if you have received a donation before, just explain what or when it was and what you did with it.
That was my question.
Yeah,
so like
previous experience.
It's like, and I think it probably makes sense under prepare a detailed budget, even just as a line item,
Again, I think that is something that is part of the application process once they've identified. I mean, in general, when someone comes to us, they usually say, we've been doing this and here's why we need to do it for y'all.
And it may be in your next line item of project outcomes and impact.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where A detailed report could be.
Yeah.
And I was thinking even under prepared detailed budget, the one that says show transparency and accountability, detail how the funding will be allocated to ensure effective use of public resources. It could be an additional sentence that say, if you've received funding from Metro before, what was it used for and what were those outcomes or something?
Well, that, yeah, but I think it's important to highlight that on the front end,
Yeah.
because a lot of nonprofits may not even think to include that before, you know?
Yeah.
This
We could
week's-
add that to the hub,
Okay,
inquiry form.
yeah, which is, I think we're
One of the
gonna-
questions on the, inquiry form could say, have you received grant funds through Metro previously?
yeah.
And that way then somebody could look up a previous contract.
Good point.
Okay,
So do you include it here or don't include it here?
we'll put it on the hub, which I'm trying to get to. Hold on. And so what you've done is at the bottom, we then drive people to the nonprofit grants manual and other helpful resources. Visit the finance department's grant division's website at, and I would like to take this group there if I can. Here we go. So, okay, and so maybe you need to check, either I did that wrong or that's a link. Check that,
Uh-oh.
Maybe
What are you
take
trying
the
to
period
get to?
off at the end.
possible?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it worked when I did it. I just
Okay.
clicked on the link.
All right, operator error, won't be the first time. Let's see, yes, okay, there we go. So Grants Coordination Division of Finance. So, and you can get to this just by going to the finance page and then poking around some. But once you get to this, then it says the grant, as we've been told, they coordinate the processing grants from outside grantors to Metro government. That's not what we're talking about. And they manage the contract processes made through direct appropriations. And in direct appropriations, that's where they are specifically named, often by the mayor's office, and they're just in the budget. Sometimes the council has done that as well. That is, but you also manage the payments for, no. Those departments do that themselves. Good to know. Okay, that is helpful to know. So then we divide this, so this is the first place that if you were just poking around to see, I'm doing something, I think Metro needs me, I'm gonna let them know they need me, and hopefully they will agree to pay me to do something that I can do better than they can. So if you go to these, then that can also drive you to the Metro Code of Laws, which just says we can do this and this is how we do it.
That's the eligibility criteria as
Yeah.
well.
And that's.
Speaking to what April said about having the nonprofit status, and then all the way at the bottom, those audit financial requirements.
Gotcha. And this is Jane Dozier who manages that, so from grants. And then there are currently, right now, there are vestiges of previous programs where the mayor's office had a budget and said, I'm gonna put X number of dollars into these 3 departments, and they will,
This one's the Community Safety Partnership.
and this is a fairly new one that came up as a.
This is not the 3. This
So,
is-
and then there's the Community Partnership Fund, which is the 3, is that,
We just need to confirm with April,
yeah.
but we'll do that after.
Okay.
So this is, I think this is somewhat new, driven by, again, the council with very good intentions saying, we want to put $1 million into violence interruption. And then 6 months later, we said, why hasn't this been spent? And we have learned why it hadn't been spent.
There have been RFPs out of this
Yes.
fund previously, so there are nonprofits that are saying, hey, is there any more funds? So this explains what that is.
Gotcha. So the
That is with the
communities,
health department. So
and
if somebody's
that's-
saying, I can do one of these things, I have a great idea for you, you should contact the health department.
so that identifies a department that is now, once we threw it in their lap, put the structure in place to make that happen. And we hope that it will continue to happen. Councilmember Porterfield.
I think I don't know the solution to this, but I think that there has to be, when we get to the substitute budget process, and Mayor Joe, you know this very well, like the ball is rolling so fast and we are trying to talk to so many departments and get so many things like squared away. And sometimes we, with very good intentions, will say, we're gonna earmark this money for this department to do this thing, and sometimes there are like miscommunications. So I think that there has to be, what happens if we, I'm gonna use April's department because this is not what happened. So like what happens if we say, here, April, we're gonna give you $2 million, but we want this money to go to X organization because they are doing this work and we want to fund this work, but we're giving it to you to pass through to that organization. And then now there's a discrepancy between April and that organization, and now April's department is holding on to that money that we earmarked for an organization, and now that organization does not have their money that we put in the budget for them specifically. So I don't know the solution to that, but like, we can't have that going forward, and I feel like it makes us lose credibility with the community when we say organization A is getting this money, and years down the line, organization A still hasn't gotten money that was promised to council and promised to them. So I think we should figure out a process too to make sure that that does not happen. And maybe that is with this process, if the organization is going to the department and they see that there's not synergy there with that department, then we need to help guide them to a different department that will be willing to work with them.
Right.
That's
So-
exactly it. That's
That's
why
exactly right.
we sound like a broken record, but that's why we're saying so much of this happens at the department level.
Yeah, and it does. And so our hope is,
Say that,
And the which one?
and eligibility.
Oh, yeah.
and eligibility, which is spelled out.
We oftentimes get a nonprofit into the budget and then they don't meet the eligibility requirements.
So we have now got this information that drives them to this page, which also drives them to section 5 of the code, which spells out that eligibility. And just that part, 5.04 of the Metro Code of Laws, yeah. And our hope is, you know, I've got the list of all the people that spoke last night, so that if this group blesses this document from council member, this one pager, then I will be emailing that to representatives of each of those organizations and saying, you know, if you've done this before, you know the ropes, you know, but let's make sure you're on target to be able to hit the ground running in July and not having to spend 6 months figuring out where you belong. And so our hope is that nobody shows up for the first time in the public hearing in June. We can't guarantee that with this process, but our hope is to spend as much energy as we can communicating with anybody who thinks they want to be doing something between now and June, so that that's not the first time we've heard from them. We'll never cover it all, but our hope is if we got something like this that we can hand to people and drive them to these pages, as well as to just talk to the departments, that can make a difference. And as I mentioned earlier, there's not a centralized place that says Nashville has a strategic plan, here are our 5 priority areas that you have to align with. But on this page, it does, within the Community Safety Partnership Fund, talk about very specifically things aligned with community safety, which I think are aligned with some of the things that we were hearing last night. Encouraging, supporting youth, I think even also includes a lot of our after-school programs, which are often funded through NASA, which has got this down to a science. So, and I had one more sheet of paper with just a few little things about.
If you'll
What
just scroll to the end, I wanted to make sure that you all, so we talk about some of the funding that's already available that's more known. So Community Safety Partnership, the Community Partnership Funds, direct appropriations, we kind of explain what they are. And then we talk about that there are several other departments that have funds that we don't know that are in their budget. They're not identified to us from a finance perspective as available for grant funding. Like there is, so Diana had a great example, like we don't know what's all in your budget that you plan to either use yourself through staffing or that you're gonna outsource something. So we can talk after this meeting, but you've asked a lot about, well, can you tell me everything that's,
Yeah,
we
now I
can't.
see that
We
now,
have
okay.
no idea. You know, like, we don't, I mean, other than like, I'm personally familiar if there's art funds that I know that April's gonna take out to an RFP, but she may have other budget funding that's in their budget that we have no idea what the intended use is. The department heads know. That's why, again, if you develop
Yeah.
a relationship with the department, they're like, oh yeah, I needed this work done. I was debating, am I gonna send my team out or am I gonna find somebody who can do it and my team doesn't have to then?
So yeah, we would use our consulting budget. So instead of giving it to a consultant, we would actually work through all of that with the university and establish it for a semester to get done. And it is a significant savings, and when you get it in about the same times, it's just a lot more organized. And again, it's a good relationship builder and gives real life experience. But
Yeah.
we use funding out of our consultants to fund that semester studio.
Gotcha. So I think our job as council members is to ensure anyone who approaches us is connected to a department early on. And our job as a committee is to let the rest of the council know this, and our hope is that Chair Porterfield will find some time in a special Budget and Finance Committee meeting where we can make that presentation sometime
yes.
soon. So that is something to be scheduled. So one of the things that the website drives people to is the nonprofit grants manual. And I believe in this grants manual, there are specific things that say, when you apply, you need to be able to tell us what you've done before and that type of thing. I've looked at so many different documents, I may have lost track of what's where, but if I remember correctly, that's what it said. And, just to show us, so this shows who we've given step to, what our standards are, internal controls, allowable costs, not allowable costs, which is like, we can do salaries, but we can't, we can't pay off your bills or things like that. No, you can't. And then the recording requirements, which is, how often you have to check back with us and what the compliance monitoring is. So again, this is something groups need to have looked at before we hear from them at the public hearing in June. So I would encourage anybody, if you haven't poked all the way through this thing, to go looking at it, because it's very useful. I've got key pages in my notebook somewhere that I thought was here. There it is. Yeah, Councilmember Porterfield.
And forgive me if we've already done this step of the process. I haven't been able to be at all of the meetings as I'm kind of spread out between the three committees and trying to support all three committees. But I know earlier on we had Erica Burnett from the village to come in and kind of look at this. If we've not already done it, I do think it would be helpful to have like a core group of nonprofits to like look at all of this process. Like maybe that's Erica, maybe that's somebody from Center of Nonprofit Management, maybe, and a couple of like small grassroots nonprofits, because the purpose of this is to make it more equitable, and we don't want to create this process that we see as very streamlined and transparent and amazing, but we have now hurt the people that we're trying to help because we have put in like maybe more barriers, or because I'm thinking about like a small nonprofit and having to read through like a 62-page manual to figure out if I even qualify could be very daunting, and I may not have the manpower for that. So I think we should make sure that before we finalize this, that we are hearing from some community people and nonprofit people to see if there's any additional input or anything else we need to consider.
Okay. And when by finish this, do you mean this document or what's on the line? I mean, in terms of being able to communicate with the nonprofits that we're hearing from now about the budget, I would like to do that as quickly as we
Sooner
can.
than later, yeah.
So do you feel like this document needs to wait on, I mean, I welcome the input that's here now, and if y'all see major flaws, speak now. But don't forever hold your peace. Speak now and speak later, but now is the most helpful.
I would say maybe bringing someone in for like the next meeting would be great. And I think this looks great, and maybe we could see this as a working document that we're willing to tweak if we get feedback that this is, causing some barriers. I just think that it's really important that we're hearing from and centering the folks that we're trying to help.
Is anybody here from sorry, Chair?
Yeah,
Is anybody here from a small nonprofit?
We've got two small ones.
Y'all, what I might call small might not be what y'all call small.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking TCF is no longer small. Right, exactly.
Okay.
Smaller than us.
So who's the smallest in the group over here?
I think I'm with, and I'm new to them, I'm with the Choosing Justice Initiative, which is a small nonprofit that works on criminal justice issues.
We put y'all in the budget.
Yes.
400,000.
Yes, and thank you. I thank y'all last night.
Can you speak to how, because you mentioned last night y'all started in November.
Yes, we started in November.
Tell us why you started in November and not July.
Part of it is we we didn't really know what we were doing, I think is the fairest. I mean, so when we were pitching this pilot program, we didn't even really know it could come in the form of a grant. We were just coming in, and at least I didn't. Dawn, the executive director, she may have been more aware than I was. And so we wrote up this proposal for Metro and just came down here and started talking to people about it. And so now we're navigating all that. So I think it's sort of the 11th hour of the budget process. We were called and said, okay, this is what we can do. And we were like, oh, this is so awesome, because we had kind of given up, frankly. We just didn't know if it was gonna happen. We thought we were done. And so thankful. Again, if I need to just emphasize that, I can't emphasize it enough. But I think at the 11th hour, what happened was Dawn, the executive director, maybe was speaking with you, Councilwoman Porterfield, and figured out we need a department, and we'll start running it through the trial court. So we are sponsoring, I call them our sponsors, the trial courts. And we didn't really know about the audit process. We didn't know about the contract. I mean, we didn't know anything. And so it took us a minute to get up to speed. And I think the biggest impediment was that audit. Just figuring out how to pay for it, because it was very expensive, and we've got a foundation to pay for half of it. And I forget which one, because I would like to thank them if anyone's associated with them. I know Dawn has thanked them profusely many times. But it was just getting the audit done and finding someone to do it took a while, and then it took them a while to finish it. And then once we got the audit finished, then we did the contract, got the contract going, and then we finally, in earnest, probably started at the beginning of November. So we've got.
And that is an ongoing story that we have heard from
Yes.
other very worthy groups, and that's what we're trying to,
How long it took them.
That's what we're
get to
trying to
that
avoid.
point. Because even as a new council person, me and Joy were working with
Yes.
them, but we didn't know the process. We didn't know how to get them to the
finish line.
The finish line.
Kind of how I feel like the
So-
finish line to start.
in terms of this, we do a good job of letting you know now that you need the department. We don't mention the audit and, maybe those other two things need to be.
That's the very first thing. It's the very first thing.
It's very
on that
something, once you
page.
get to the grants manual.
Metro code, nope, you don't have to get to the manual. You do not have to read 62 pages. You have to go to nonprofit funding, and it says you must meet the Metro code eligibility. And the link is to the 6 items.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not to that, go up.
Reach out
Up
to
on
them,
that
I
page.
forget that, but.
Right there. No
There's
worries.
the Metro code.
Right there.
to be
it's on
considered
our
eligible to receive a
HMIS.
grant. Okay, go to this and do
That should take you
that.
right
Should we, on this page, say something, just a little bit about, you will need to provide financial information, go here to find out what, or something? I mean, it's down at the bottom, do we need to have something at the very beginning as well? I don't know, how we do one thing.
I think we do, and if I'm wearing my nonprofit hat, not my council hat, that's a very real scenario, because often you visualize these programs, and
Right.
it may be a brand new one.
And that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's new.
And it's a process to get that up and running, even within the organization. So I think the more information we can provide up front, because had you known that,
Right, we would have.
and it's there, but you don't always know where to go look for
And
it.
that's like you have this idea and this problem you want to fix, and you just don't realize there's all these different layers to kind of get into where you want to start.
Okay, you had a response, Councilman.
And to just be like very transparent, we're looking at good programs that come before us. But I said, this program looks good. We got a one-pager some months ago, and it literally sat in my desk, and in the back of my mind, I was like, if we can find some money, I would like to fund this. And thankfully, working with like Dr. Darby and Mary Jo, like we were just able to say like, okay, I want to put money for this in the budget. But that's not really a fair process, because like this was a very worthy thing, but like also like other organizations are doing very worthy things too, and it's like, how do we make sure that they also had, because it really wasn't this like rhyme or reason as to why we gave money to this. It like the rationale made sense, like
Made a good case.
indigent care, there needs to be indigent defense. If there's a conflict with the public defender, people still need representation. So we just need to put some money towards it. So like it makes sense, but it also makes sense to invest in like workforce
All kinds of
development.
things,
And it
yes.
makes sense to,
Housing, every school.
absolutely,
every-
right. So just trying to figure out like how we help people like develop out that process. And we've heard from other nonprofits too that the audit is a big barrier, but we have to be accountable for government money, so we can't not do an audit. But how do we find a way to maybe lessen the burden or help people with that audit process? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's something that we need to look at.
And we do very specifically, if this will go to it, spell out that in that, I think it's in that section 5, we say if you're this size, you have to do a full-blown audit. If you're this size, you have to do something smaller, and other things. So
It's also based on the size of the grant.
and the size of the grant.
Probably the more important.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because if you get a grant over $50,000 or more, you have to have an audit. Doesn't matter
Okay.
how small or how big you are.
But that is spelled out in chapter 5 of the code, I think.
It is.
So, and that's available information. Okay,
I have another question, sorry. I
Heather
appreciate.
from Rafa, right?
Heather
Okay.
from Rafa Institute. I appreciate all the work you guys are putting into setting up this process. It's really helpful just having this information. For nonprofits that got direct appropriations through the council last year, because I have a client that got a direct appropriation and also has a grant from the Department of Health. So for this cycle, this budget cycle, should I expect then no council people will be filing direct appropriations and that we need to find a department to, because that's pretty soon.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean,
Now.
I would say, I think we want the council to know that we still have, in theory, if there's money available, we would like to be able to say, we think this is important, but we have learned that we are not doing you any favors if the groundwork has not been laid to say, we want you to do this, we know that the health department will be able to, or NASA for after-school programs or whatever, that piece should be in place before we do our big-hearted, let's put it in the budget thing. And I think that's what we're trying to educate the nonprofits, the departments, and the council members, so that when it happens, it's an orderly process. So I guess what we would say to you is, when you come to us, if number one, if you get in the mayor's budget, that's the best. If you can get in the department's budget, that's great, but they will have to do an RFP process in general. If you don't make it in the mayor's budget, hopefully, even in that process of trying to be in the mayor's budget, welcome.
Thank you, baby.
She delivers it, but only if she's your daughter. Thank you. I think our whole takeaway is, we'll be able to serve you better, and you'll be able to serve us better if you've worked through the department before you come to the mayor, and if that doesn't work, before you come to us, still have that same framework laid out. Is that fine?
Yeah, I think the goal is to try to figure out how we streamline this process so that we're not like kind of piecemealing and doing different things. So like, we had an entity where one of the council members wanted to give money to a nonprofit, and then a caucus ended up supporting it, and the money had to go through a department, but then the department didn't know how to get that money to the nonprofit. So now their work is being held up because the money is just sitting, right? And there's good use and good work, and we don't want people to just get access to their money in January and we allocated it in July. So this is to hopefully help streamline that process, and ideally we'll all go through the same process so that people aren't like, and it's kind of, I hate to operate in like definitives, right? Because we may get this amazing thing that happens that's just like, oh, we gotta fund this, right? And then you're kind of tying your hands. So I don't want to say that it will never happen any other way, and I can't control what another budget chair does next year. But ideally, we just want to lay out the groundwork to let people know that this is your best chance of getting funding and being successful with the funding that you get.
Right. So I think, Councilmember Spain, it sounds to me like if we can work one more sentence closer to the top that just mentions, you will need to learn about financial reporting stuff, if you want to put the word audit in there without freaking people out, that, and what was the other thing? The audit and what was the other part that was?
It was Huffman saying, like, if you've
Experience.
received funding before, what did you do with it? How was it used or whatever, under prepared detailed budget, under the bullet point to show transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
So So if I can clarify, so I did that one under, where'd it go? Under prepare a detailed budget, it's added a third line that said past experience with Metro. If you have received grant funds from Metro in the past, detail what funding was received and how it was used.
Okay, that's
And then on this last one, what do you think of, maybe we break out number 1 and just say where to start and break that out into contacting the appropriate department and reviewing the criteria to make sure the eligibility
Yeah.
requirements in title, wherever it was.
I think having Metro Department in bold, close to the top, is super important.
Yeah.
And it sounds like just some mention of the financial stuff, I think needs to be close to the top. And maybe that's that's under what to include. Maybe there's one more line under what to include that says you'll need to provide financial information that may require an accountant see such and such to find out more about that.
I love that, where to begin, like changing, work through appropriate Metro department, whatever, however you want to do that, but I love labeling it like where to start.
I just want to make sure Metro Department shows up loud and clear, because I think that's the
Can we even go a step further with that? Because a lot of people, don't know anybody at a department. So under that, can we like do a sub and where each department has somebody that is like, we send them to in that department that knows the process?
I mean, how are we don't have that list, so that's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the list of departments and contact information on there,
Right,
but
and that's
I
the
don't
one
know.
other thing I want to show is under Hub Nashville.
We didn't even know this existed until 2 weeks ago.
See what I'm saying? I mean, if we're sending
So
them
in
to a
general, who
department.
would they contact in the
Yeah.
department? Should
Yeah.
they reach out to the director
That's what I'm
of
saying. I
the
think we need to pinpoint that
department?
more.
And then the director leads them to the right person?
I like
think
that
it's
idea
really
more.
important.
Yeah.
Because if someone called and said, hey, I'm interested in this, and this is I'm like, okay, I need to learn something, let's go learn.
Yeah, there you
I would have learned this 3 years ago, and I would have already been doing it.
There you go.
Training that I have.
Training budget, we're
Yes, on that point, we could send just an email to department heads and council liaisons to see if they can give us that contact information
Okay.
that they would be interested in providing.
Thank you. Very subtle. Okay. Thank you. Council office, okay. You're gonna request contact info. Okay, great. All right, thank y'all for being here, that we understand some people have to leave at 2. I was gonna try to be done by now. The one other thing I wanna just kind of briefly look at is the hub application, which has sort of been a black hole. And so that sort of ties into the who is the person in the department that actually looks at those. Right now, even finding that is a challenge. I was thinking that somewhere from
We've
here,
already, well,
there-
it'll be on there, but if you go to the main page right now,
is this the main page?
no, main metro, Nashville.gov homepage.
Got a spell. Nashville.gov. Good grief. There you go.
Can't type in.
Can't type and talk.
So people are watching, okay, so if you, on the hub, submit a hub Nashville request.
Thank you. Oh, wow. That's so big, I've never seen it. Okay.
If you scroll all the way down to the bottom right corner, so go up a bit. So it will now be on this bottom of the page.
Like right there, right
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Currently, though, you have to click on the other Metro services and forms,
Other.
and then scroll until you see community partnership enhancement.
And service enhancement.
Right there on the right.
Yeah.
So, and we're gonna change that to nonprofit partnership, so that if somebody's thinking nonprofit, so we've
Okay.
already requested those changes, but, and so then it says start a new request.
Yeah. And then here,
And that's where then it starts to say, which department do you wanna work with?
right, and at this point, it shows just about all of them.
All of them that have received grants, or that
Yeah.
have given out grants,
I'm
sorry.
gonna point out, what is your department called?
The Office of Homeless Services.
So, I don't see it there.
We're updating it.
Okay, great. That seemed like an important one. I was kind of saying.
Oh, you're right,
Should be in alphabetical order. Let's just
Unless
say
it's
that.
under homeless services.
Yeah.
Or maybe homeless
All right, so what is
services.
our organization? Council team, whatever, and then our organization, and then what's the priority? Okay, this is where, the priority areas,
This is updating those priorities.
Okay.
who is doing that?
The mayor's office.
Mayor's office, with their official priorities, which is as good a group as any, as long as they include the things that we think are important. And housing, for example, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just theirs.
Yeah.
But we do want, that we've typically, the mayor's office has put in their priorities.
Right.
But that's a great point, you can add others.
Okay, and that would, we would do that through, so this is to enhance something that Metro already does, all right, what are you gonna do? Yes, what program, homeless services or whatever. And then, please provide any additional information, we are great. And then you just,
And then who does this go to, Mary Jo?
So then the hub team gets this request and sends it to the department that is listed. And Margaret, we actually have the contact list already.
perfect, so you're good.
Did she say it's on here? The contact list is on here?
No, it will go to the department that is listed. So if it says we want to work with Office of Homeless Services, then the hub team will send it to April.
So let me ask you this. I'm a nonprofit. Do I, as a nonprofit, reach out to April 1st and say, hey, let's start this conversation? Or do I do a hub request and the hub request goes to April and then April reaches out to me?
So a hub request is not necessary at all. The hub
Okay.
request is really for maybe somebody who never has really developed a relationship,
Okay.
but this is my opinion. If you have a relationship and know who to call and you can start working with, hey, what do you see as, your needs coming up? How can we help meet those needs? That might be the one thing I would push-pull. The document is very much tell the departments what you can do
Yeah.
and listen to what the departments need.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just a way of developing that relationship.
So maybe we need to put the hub request on here also?
Well, what I was going to ask is, do you all want that document to be at the front of the hub?
I think so.
As an article, yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think it'll be great to have this on there.
The hub is where kind of the people that don't really know where to go are going. And that hub link will be on our finance page.
Yeah.
So they can read through all of that, but if they're still like, okay, I have an inquiry. So they, if people already know who to talk to, or generally, like maybe they say, well, okay, I'm gonna call social services, and they call social services and say, oh, well, you need to talk to April now because they're kind of taken over that. So, they might find their way through the system, but the hub inquiry is literally an inquiry. It's not a grant application, right?
Yeah.
So it would be to give all of that information would then go to April or a department head, and they'd be like, oh, this is really interesting. I don't really need that, but they might be able to help me with this.
Yeah. I think if we, like if you have no idea who to go to and I'm trying to figure out this process, but there's something that says like under like for a list of metro departments, click here, and then maybe that says like, if you're unsure or whatever, like you can do the hub request. My fear is that it goes to a department and then it ends up in purgatory. Is that what they call it? Right? Yeah, it just like goes into this space and then the department doesn't have the capacity to like reach out to the person. The person is thinking that they're in queue and it just, so I don't want people to like rely on the hub, but I think it may be helpful to show, I don't know, maybe it's not helpful, but maybe it's helpful to mention that they can do that.
Yeah, and check out, every single department has a page on metro.gov. And you really can learn a lot about their mission, and there's a lot of different contact info. And I'm not saying that it doesn't all kind of go to general numbers and general emails. And it does rely on the department following up. It does.
Right. Which is why the communication is key on that one.
I think another thing, I know this is budget season, so this is perfect timing for this, but is there a certain amount of funding that's gonna be allotted for this and kind of set aside, because I don't want us to like drum up business, and that makes nonprofits angry when there's no money, and
So
we've
I will
drummed
say
up a
two
process and business and there's no money.
Right, no, we have started every meeting with,
There's no money.
There's no money. But if you were gonna come and ask for money, there's a right way and a wrong way, and we wanna help you do it the right way, and we will see what happens. However, what we are gonna talk about at our next meeting is just trying to at least begin the framework for the Nashville needs process, because as part of the Titan Stadium, there was a commitment to put $1 million a year into the Nashville Needs Fund, and the council will be tasked with distributing that. So at some point in the future, there will be money, and we will try to set up something, learning a lot from what we did, with the CARES Act funding. And this group is not officially tasked with doing that, but we thought we've learned so much about how to do it right and how to do it wrong, that we want to at least have a starting document for that, so that we don't, all of a sudden, the year arrives and we've got money, and we go, oh shoot, now what do we do? So,
maybe at the
that's
top
different.
of that document, before you put the department, you could put there is no money, so
Yeah.
that they won't think the department is the one that's withholding that information.
Don't
So
you have grants that you give out?
I do, but the RFP, like that could be it. There's no money, or go to the department's website for current funding opportunities, because we would list our RFPs on the website and social sites.
All departments list their RFPs.
They should. They should. Maybe we can encourage them
okay,
to do that.
so are we, Mr. Spain, are you clear on what we've asked you to do?
There's no money.
Yeah, big bold letters, blinking.
There's one. Yeah. Close.
Close.
Yeah, I guess the question is how quickly we're trying to get this out, and how, you want to wait till the next meeting to review the next draft of this, or is this something, Margaret, is this something I can email
Darby,
to
what are our
them?
options
Or
here?
So my recommendation would be, if you want to send out a document prior to the next meeting and reviewing the final document, that today you decide what you're gonna task Councilmember Spain with putting in or adding or taking out of the document. And that way, those particular items are covered, and then we
Right.
kind of, approved it for delivery. And then
Right.
also with the knowledge that I will help with formatting and some housekeeping adjustments that are not substantive.
I have one word that I think will be helpful at the very beginning where it says funds may be available. Maybe we add the word limited funds may be available. So that way people
That's a good point.
are not thinking that there's an influx of.
$5 million contract coming in,
Yeah.
Right, that's a good. So we've said we want to do that. We've said we would like to at least have some kind of reference to financial information, whether we want to use the word audit or not, but.
Can I just reference then to that list that's in 504070 instead of trying to list all that out? Can I just say, I'll include that link and say, here's the requirements, make sure you meet them?
Yeah, I think that's good. And then, I'm not sure how to resolve this, but I think we should. I think, language about here's how you start is great, but I also think the Metro Department words cannot be stressed enough, so.
I agree.
What do you got here? Work through the appropriate Metro departments.
Where to begin?
That needs some work, but that's.
Where to begin a work through review, okay, that's great. Okay, as long as it's in bold, okay. So.
And as long as we can still fit it on one page.
Right, that's
So
gonna
the
take
one
some.
pager doesn't go to
That's where Margaret's gonna have to create
1.125 pager.
Okay,
margins
so-
and font and such.
So we have tasked you with adding the, some language about eligibility and the funding information that will be needed, and however you've connected with, had funds from that before, those three things.
Got it.
And Ms. Darby is gonna do some formatting and cleanup things, and so knowing those things, are we ready to approve the document, knowing the three modifications that are gonna be made and the housekeeping modifications? And as a subcommittee working group, do we vote officially, or?
Yeah, you can vote,
Okay.
actually. Your votes, I mean, technically are to make recommendations to the full committee, but if this is a, document you want to send to the people who spoke last night, was that last night?
Who was?
Spoke last night, then,
It wasn't even this morning.
yeah, I think that the subcommittee can do that, or
Okay.
the working group.
So do I have a motion to approve it with those changes?
So moved.
Great, second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on approving this document?
You want that added to the hub page then?
And adding it
after-
to the hub page, I think,
Okay.
I think that's a great idea, thanks for that suggestion. Okay, so, we're approving the document and adding it to the hub page and sending it to the nonprofits that spoke last night, and anybody else that shows up interested in helping Metro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think that was the work I wanted to accomplish.
Maybe send it out to all the council members too.
So we want to have an education process with the council. We would like to have, my thought is, meet with the Budget and Finance Committee as well as the major caucuses that usually have recommendations. So and we can deputize who wants to go to the caucuses, but we for sure need to visit the Women's Caucus and the Minority Caucus because they've had a big impact on the budget every year.
We
So
could
those
just,
3 groups.
I think we should just do one meeting and invite them. Anybody from the body can come, but
But they won't.
primarily.
So I want to show up there at their actual meetings.
Oh, okay.
as well.
I don't mind doing the women's, I go to just about every one
Yeah.
of them.
I mean, let's do both, or whatever, but if you can help me schedule that meeting, and then we can cover the bases the other way as well. Thank y'all, thank all the nonprofits. Did you get to sign in? Okay, we would love to have your name on that. I think we may meet one more time, maybe on March 5th, same time, same place. Does the time work? Okay, or?
I'll be out of the country on March 5th, but I will. I can't give any feedback before then.
Okay, that sounds good.
And I do want to make sure that we don't forget to give some of that feedback too. We reached out to Erica
Okay.
and just some of those other. So I don't know if that's through an official meeting or maybe you
Send it
talking
to
to
her.
them
Yeah.
or whatever. but-
She's been a few times, so
Yeah,
I think it'd be
she's-
good to send it to her.
That's a
Yeah.
good point, I'm gonna write that down. And then I feel like what we've done is good work here, we know who we need to communicate it to. Thank you so much. And I would like for the next meeting to focus on thinking our way through the Nashville needs fund. And Mary Jo, if you can help me identify people we should invite who were on that previous organization, I think you had mentioned people that would be good.
Oh, and the other oversight committee?
Not the council members, but the other folks. If you can help me with that, that would be great. Anything else for the body? Okay, we're only 16 minutes late. Thanks to everybody for coming. Your feedback is very helpful, and I feel like we're making progress here. All right, we're adjourned.